I'm going to go ahead and get started because I think we have quite a few people on, Jen, and Facebook Live. I think they're going to start doing that as well. So I want to welcome everyone. My name is Pamela Goodman, and I'm the president and CEO of Rooslist Florida. And I want to really welcome you for taking the time out this afternoon and joining us on our afternoons. We've been doing this all this week, our afternoons with Rooslist candidates. We're thrilled and honored. If you could just hit your mute button or else we will mute you. Hi, welcome Jerry Green, Judith Rosman, you're joining. Hi Greg, welcome. If you could just hit your mute button or otherwise we'll mute you. We're trying to keep just the candidate and myself on open mic. So again, welcome. We are doing this, we started doing this really for the last, well, since our world's changed, and gone is the way of baby kissing and handshaking, which is what politicians do this time of year. So Rooslist immediately pivoted to virtual. And so we've been doing these events and educational events on things surrounding the current crisis that's really imploding around all of us, but also doing interviews with people like Jen McDonald this afternoon, all around the state for various positions. Just to get you acquainted with her and give her something for her campaign to use also. So I just want to let everyone know this is being recorded. And for those of you that are attending, you will receive a recorded version of it. Probably at this point in time, it won't be until tomorrow morning, but you'll get a recorded recap of it. We're on Facebook Live also, so you can catch us there on the Rooslist Florida Facebook page, and then you can share it around if you'd like, which would be terrific. Yeah, that's kind of what this is all about. So again, thank you for joining us. First, I'd like to tell you just a little bit. Rooslist Florida, for those of you that don't know, we are a very, very laser-focused organization. So our mission is to identify, recruit, train, mentor, and help get elected Democratic, progressive, pro-choice women to all levels of state government, from school board, city and county commission, state legislative, Senate and House, cabinet, and gubernatorial. Particularly in this race, I think it's important to note, and the candidates that we are spotlighting in this series are our endorsed candidates. So currently, Rooslist is engaged with over 200 women in the state of Florida, with their campaigns in all of these different levels of races. And about 100 of them really very, very intimately involved, talking to them quite often and making sure that they get launched correctly. But there's a somewhat of a misnomer out there that Rooslist endorses all of the candidates that we work with. And I'd like to dispel that myth. We work with our candidates, we give them tough love, we give them real love, but our endorsement comes only after we have worked with a woman enough and seen not only that she has a path to victory to be elected, but when and if she's elected, she would be a leading elected official for whatever race she's running for. We spend a lot of time on these endorsements, and our candidates work very, very hard to gain our endorsements. So again, it's not just because you're a woman and you're a Democrat and you're pro-choice to get a Rooslist endorsement. We'll work with you and make you the best that you can be, but it's really a very select few that do receive our endorsements, and those are the women that we're highlighting in these afternoons that we're spending with them. So let me tell you a little bit about Jen, and then she's going to tell you a little bit more about herself. So first of all, you probably already know that she is running for the Hillsborough County Commission, seat number 1. Jen grew up, not in Florida, in inner city Philadelphia. She was the daughter to both a union plumber and a chemist who really instilled in her, and you can see it every day in her work, hard work and persistence. She is very tenacious. She self-funded her college education at Temple University, earning a bachelor's in business administration with concentrations in risk insurance management and legal studies. She seized the opportunity, like many of us did, to relocate to Florida, to Tampa especially, upon graduation. Over the past 2 decades, Jen has really built a life dedicated to her community in Hillsborough County. She was faced with the option, young in her career, of moving into a corporate role, but she had really planted her roots firmly in the community as an entrepreneur, and she made the decision and wanted to stay in that role. As a startup entrepreneur, she has the experience of bringing concept to reality. She knows how to take an idea and think it through and all the steps that it takes to turn it into that nugget of gold. She's also worked closely with entrepreneurs who have shared the challenges that they face in this region, helping them. She brings these experience and values with her as she builds up the community through both her leadership, her business, and especially her entrepreneurship skills. So it's a pleasure to welcome Jen McDonald this afternoon as a ruthless endorsed candidate for Hillsborough County Commission, Seat 1. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see everybody, right?
Yes, to see everybody here. It's so great to see friends from up north visiting on the call as well. A lot of folks who aren't able to interact with the campaign here in Tampa. Now this has given them the opportunity to get involved and check out what's going on here. So it's fantastic.
That is. We're turning lemons into lemonade as much as we can in this current crisis that we're in. So Jen, let's just kind of start off on. We have a lot of things that we could talk about revolving around clearly what's been going on and what we all find ourselves in the middle of. But let's back up before maybe we talk about some of those things and talk about why are you here today? Why are you even running for this seat?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I've been very involved in my community. And back in 2018, I had just finished up a term as the president of my neighborhood association, Historic Hyde Park. I was sitting on the South Tampa Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, making decisions for small businesses there. And I was working as a chairwoman of the Business Advisory Committee at Hillsborough Community College, helping to shore up our local entrepreneurs. And in those 3 capacities, I really got a lot of time and hands-on work with what our county was doing and some of the decisions that our electeds were making. And to be quite honest, I wasn't happy with the decisions that they were making on our behalf. I was frustrated with those decisions. And so when the Democratic Party reached out to me about this specific seat and recruited me to run, I listened to what they had to say. I contemplated what exactly was this going to look like. And then after contemplating it, I answered their call, knowing that I would have the skill set to do the job as a commissioner in Hillsborough County. And I think that I bring an interesting mix of skills to the commission that aren't already there.
So what do you think are the biggest challenges that you're going to face sitting on this county commission in Hillsborough?
So right now there are a number of challenges that are facing Hillsborough County. When I moved here in 2003, 1,000 people a day were moving into the state of Florida. Over the course of those 17 years that I've been here, we've been to multiple years with multiple storms. We've been through an economic downturn at the national level. And through all of those things, all of those challenges, that pace has barely ever broken its stride. And we're getting a big chunk of those people, over 60 people a day, move into our region alone, right here in the Hillsborough County region. And so with that tremendous growth comes tremendous needs for increase in services. And unfortunately, we see a lot of situations that have arisen. We've had topics of transportation being a major issue, affordable housing being a major issue, school issues with not having enough schools and chairs and desks and rooms to put students in. We have issues with Hillsborough County Fire Rescue. You know, our Hillsborough County Fire Rescue is a study in 2019 showed that they are 25 fire stations short of delivering at the expected service levels that we expect here. That's a big deal, right? And that study, along with studies from all of these other entities, show that the cost, the impact that a new person or new family moving into our region has on the service need is not being addressed up front. So the impact fees that we have on new residential development, new residential buildings being developed, are not meeting the need that that actual new residential home is going to generate in our economy. So I think our number one pressing issue is addressing impact fees so that we can bring our level of service back up to where it belongs and maintain that level of service, right? And so that's a challenge that I haven't seen our electeds addressing in a meaningful way. There have been some things that have come up over the last couple of years, and particularly this year, on like schools. They did an impact fee increase to address schools. The study showed that we need $12,000 per residential unit to cover the impact for schools. We doubled from $4,000 to $8,000 on the impact fee, but the reality is that last $4,000 is being shouldered on the backs of all of the folks who live in this community and pay taxes every single year, instead of being shouldered by the folks who are building the new and buying the new residential homes and moving into our community. So these are challenges that really need to continue to be addressed and looked at.
Most definitely. With the current situation that's going on, I'm sure you're talking to your future constituents and hearing from them some of their concerns. Can you share with us some of what you're hearing from either small business owners or the people that are facing the huge unemployment rate that keeps growing and growing in the state every day, and how are you making them feel better, and where are you directing them and assisting them?
Yeah, so when the COVID-19 crisis began, right now back in March, it was almost as if it wasn't a thing here, right? Early March, people were not aware of the situation. We weren't watching as closely what was happening globally or thinking we were going to have this experience come through here. And then on March 2nd, what really caught my attention, I was watching what was happening in Asia, and I was thinking, okay, how is this contained? Is this like the last, like H1N1? How are we going to be impacted by this? And I started watching what was happening. And then we had somebody come through our airport sick and come through on March 2nd. And that news broke. And that was like a shift in my mind where it's like, okay, it's real, it's here. Now, what does that mean? And I went through the process of what does that mean? You look at, okay, how does this excuse me, there's allergies. So how does this disease spread? Is it an easily spread disease, or is it a harder to spread disease? How long are people sick and spreading the disease and don't know it? And how quickly, like how long is the incubation period? And then also who or what is the cause of death or the cause of like a major concern, right? So I looked at all of those parameters, and we know that is a super easily spread disease. We know that people can be sick and spreading the disease and have no idea that they are sick. And most people will do so for up to 14 days before they exhibit symptoms and actually get sick if they're going to exhibit symptoms. And we know that the thing that is killing people is that the hospital systems are overrun by the sick folks who need critical care, right? And then it was, how do we quantify that? And so I did an op-ed on this where I looked at like, how can I quantify what these exposures are? And I looked at it and I said, well, the only factor that I can look at is people over the age of 65, and they have a higher propensity of having to need medical care, right? I can't quantify the people under the age of 65 who will need medical care because those numbers are not good out there. And I can't quantify folks who have immunocompromised because that data isn't available to me. So I looked at how many people in the state of Florida are over 65, and I looked at the number of hospital beds that the state of Florida has. So we have over 4,200,000 people over the age of 65 in the state of Florida. We have only around 70,000 hospital beds, total hospital beds, not emergency room, just total hospital beds available in the state of Florida. That means we can't have more than 70,000 people sick in critical need at any one given time. And that's not even addressing like the need for ventilators. So I realized that these were all critical problems. Now, how do we slow down or stop that? I got on the phone with some friends and was connected with a pediatric, a woman who's a local pediatrician who studied pediatric infectious disease and the etymology of how diseases spread. And so she and I got on the call, and I talked about what I knew, and she talked about what she knew, and we gelled. So I realized the one thing we both were doing is getting inundated with phone calls from friends and family about what exactly this was, what does it mean, and what do we know? Because we're the go-to resources for a lot of those folks, right? And so so she and I realized that a quick way to address all of those inbound calls was to go live. So we went live on Facebook with what the disease is, why social distancing is important. And we talked about all of these things in a very conversational manner, and people really took to it. And as the trajectory of people starting to get sick came up, I was getting a lot of questions about how do I stay, if I'm sick, how do I take care of myself? When do I go to the doctor? So we got back on Facebook Live and did another video sharing those simple information. It was really fast, it was quick, it was easy, and it was good information. We got a lot of good feedback. At that point, I realized that my campaign page could be a resource. I have tons of people. I have thousands of people who get emails from me regularly. So I created a separate page on my campaign website specifically for COVID-19 with all the resources that you could possibly need. And I've been interviewing my good friends and putting up interviews with them live on Facebook so that they can then tell our respective audience, give their expertise to them. So we've been running that and trying to keep information out there. So really, the thing I would do, even if I wasn't running for office, is continue to share information. That's what I've always been good at. And so I just started doing that to help with this situation as best I can.
Can you give everybody your website now and your Facebook page? Because I'm sure people want to go and look at that information, Jen.
Sure. So the website is www.votejenmcdonald.com. And then the Facebook page, when you search in Facebook, if you put Jen McDonald, Vote Jen McDonald, or Jen McDonald campaign, you should be able to find me. The profile picture is me in a pink dress. So you'll see it and know it's me, and you can go ahead and follow us there. There's tons of info on my Facebook page, and I've got stuff that I videoed today that I've recorded that's coming live over the next couple of days too. So there'll be more info up there.
Okay, great. So I know you've been doing a lot of interviews and you have been talking to a lot of people. Let's pivot for a minute and we'll come back to this at the end, but tell us about your campaign. How is your campaign going? How have you changed your campaign now that we all can't be together? And you've got this captive group of people who are here because they either want to find out more about you or they already love you and want to help you more. How can they help? But talk to us about how your campaign is going and how you've pivoted since this all started in March.
Sure. So the campaign is going really well. We had a fantastic February. March was starting to kick off well. We had a bunch of folks. So this is where we were when this struck, right? We had a bunch of folks who were doing independent canvassing to collect petitions on behalf of the campaign, so we don't have to pay the $6,000 filing fee.
Right.
And we had 2 planned and ready to be attended. We had attendees who were already signed up to attend 2 big canvas days, the 2nd Saturday and the 3rd Saturday of March. Now, by the 2nd Saturday of March, I had stopped all of my 10 independent canvassers and stopped the 4 or 5 that were getting ready to launch as independent canvassers, and we had called off our canvassing because you couldn't go door to door. You can't be right even then. And then, so what we did to pivot from there is we're trying to help the community, right? So I have folks who are at home who are looking for something to do and looking to engage with other adults, right? And so what we've done is we've creating lists of folks within Hillsborough County that maybe are in the at-risk. So we are trying to focus on some folks who are over 65. We're going a little below too sometimes, but really focusing on those folks who maybe aren't able to get out to the grocery store or might have an extra need for something. And we're doing call outs, and we've created a little call out script for them so that they have some things that they know what they should talk about. But we also, what we did was we made it so that they have all of the resources. So we have the tools like Shipt and how to sign up for Shipt. We have the tools like Shopping Angels, which is where they're volunteers out shopping for folks who are in the high risk categories. We have where to go access food through food pantries, or if you need help with getting food through a food pantry, here's who to call. So we put all these resources into a sheet, and then we have a bunch of people who are going to be sitting at home and really we're looking and craving for interaction, who are doing call outs for us. So if anybody is interested in chatting with some folks in the community, we've had tons of great feedback. People really love, first of all, everybody who's doing this, like, this is so heartwarming. People are so receptive to having a phone call. and just chat with somebody. They haven't had a call in a couple of days from anybody, and they've been stuck in their house, right? And so it's heartwarming to hear like folks are appreciative of the call. And so if you're bored or looking for a little something to do or want to help out with the campaign, that's where we're focused, right? We're talking to people, we're making sure that they get access to the things that they need. And so that's been really where we've been focused right now. On the fundraising side, that's always a challenge, no matter where you are. And so that's been an ongoing challenge, is how do we pivot to fundraising again to make sure that we're raising the funds needed to win the election? But we're also not spending any money right now. So we're being very conservative, which is how I plan to continue to run the campaign anyway, on how we're using our dollars. Every single dollar is going directly 100% into reaching voters, because that's what's important. And so we're looking to continue to figure out how to raise money and talk to folks about that. So if anybody is, willing to make a donation, I am happy to take that. We will put your money to good use, reaching voters and informing them about the campaign. And so that's really where we've been. We've really just done the thing that we've always done, right? I care most about people first. That's my number one. My driver, you ever do those things where they test you on what your drivers are? My driver is people. And so if I'm helping people, that will always be like the motivating factor to move people forward, to help people. And right now, that's what we're doing with this campaign too.
I'm glad you brought up, yes, and I know you, and I know that that's your priority, which is why you'll make a great elected official, and you're a good listener as well. You present very well, but you listen very well, and clearly what you just talked about, you're very, very keen on making sure that you want to hear what people want to talk about, even just to give them someone to talk to. But I'm glad you brought up the fundraising, because a lot of times people question, like, what do candidates need all this money for? Everyone talks about how much they're raising, and everyone's compared with their opponents and who's raised this and who hasn't raised that, as an indicator of who might be a better elected official in the end, which is truly not the case at all. But the reality is that you do need X amount of money to reach voters. How many people are in your district, Jen?
So we have 207,000 voters in my district. So it's a very large district. And what I like to tell people as an illustration is, if you had to inform 207,000 people about your presence and what you've done, like, I'm a well-connected person in this community. I work really hard across my section of this community as much as I can. So I feel like my reach of people is maybe somewhere around 3 to maybe 5,000 people. So to win an election, so if we look at just the voters, let's just carve it down, because right now I'm in a primary in August, so I'm going to go micro on it. But so there are 25,000 plus people who voted in the Democratic primary in this district in 2018 for all of the races available. Okay, so of those 25,000 people, I need to be able to reach them and inform them who I am, what I stand for, and why I'm here. And the dollars go directly towards that. So if you look at what it costs to do a mailer per se, right? One mailer is about 54 cents to produce the mailers. So for each of them, and another 54 cents or change depending to mail the mailer. So it's a little over $1, close to $1.10 to produce and mail each and every mailer. So for me to reach, say if we just round down to $1, for me to reach each of those 25,000 people one time with the mailer is 25 grand out the door. And if people never see you and don't understand what you stand for, they don't know what they're getting. So the point is that you have to be able to do that thing of informing them of who you are. And that's really where the money goes. On larger campaigns where there's big walking and field campaign going on, where you have a lot of folks who are working field, you may hire a field organizer, or like a really nice thing to have is to have somebody who's managing the campaign, so that you're able to be the candidate to answer the issues, to address the issues, and you're not worried about scheduling your calendar and making sure that your emails are proofread and all the things that, right now I'm doing. I have volunteers helping, but, we're running a lean, mean, fighting machine campaign over here. And so I'm doing it, and then we're engaging volunteers to help with their tools and resources that they have too.
And you bring up a really good point. With any candidate, whatever they're running for, the key component, I mean, one of it is what Jen talked about, which is her her messaging, her mailers, her you know how she's her digital, how she's touching voters. But a big part of touching voters in normal candidate and election life is their field program. So typically every candidate, I mean, right now, straight through until the election, has an immense amount of volunteers, which I know that you did, and are out knocking doors. And the candidate is literally talking to voters face to face. No way can Jen talk to all 200,000 voters in her district, and that's why she needs money to do these other things. But what's happening in these times is clearly that whole portion, which is a huge portion of a typical campaign, is gone. I mean, it got wiped out. So every candidate in the state, but Jen especially in Hillsborough County, a very large county, is now faced with something that was not going to cost her anything. Volunteers going door to door. That's a canvassing program. And you get volunteers to do it. She now has to figure out how is she going to replace touching all those voters with either digital communications or things like these kinds of platforms. You know, you've only got X amount of ways that you can communicate. Social media, digital media, the you know, old school, pick up the phone and talk to them on the phone, and old school snail mail, assuming that our postal service stays up and running, which right now we hope that it does. But you know, there's only X amount of ways that you can communicate. So that field program has put a real extra burden on all of our candidates, on everyone who's running at any level all across the state, and it has to be replaced with things that unfortunately are not free of charge. So it sounds like that's what you're pivoting to, which is exactly what you need to do.
Yeah.
Who currently sits in this seat, Jen?
Yep. So Sandy Merman
from the group.
Yep. So Sandy Merman is the current commissioner in this seat. Her term is up, so she will not be running for re-election for this seat. So it is an open race.
Okay. And how many opponents do you have? You have a primary opponent, I know, and then
there are 4 of us in the race currently. My primary opponent, myself, and then there are 2 Republicans on the other side running in a Republican primary as well. All 3 of the other candidates that are in this race are male candidates. So I am a little different from the rest of them. And dynamically, this seat has actually been held by a woman since 2002. So that kind of leans in my favor a little bit. So I'm excited about that. We have a lot of strong female leaders in District 1. Just to brag a little bit on the numbers, of the 25,000 people who voted, Democrats who voted in this primary in 2018, 14,600 of them and change were women. So there's a lot of strong female leaders out there voting, exercising their voter right, and really making a difference in who's elected. So, so I feel like I am representative of the constituent.
Yeah, most definitely, and can certainly be helped by women and ladies. Use your networks out there and help get Jen's name out there. Someone from the group wants to know, who is your primary opponent?
Yep. So my primary opponent is actually somebody I know pretty well. He was once a mentor of mine, and back in October he decided to enter the race to run against me after losing the mayor's race. And his name is Harry Cohen. He was a city councilman for District 4, which overlaps this district, the South Tampa piece of this district. He is a great guy, he's a good friend of mine, but just like a little insider information, in the mayor's race, he did not win a single precinct, not even a precinct in any of the districts that he had been elected as a city councilman in. And in the 38 overlapping precincts with this district, he only came in second in 18 of them. The other 20, he was third or worse in those precincts. So there's because people do ask that question and they wonder, like, are you running against an incumbent? I'm like, well, kind of. And he's a nice guy. He's a friendly person, but you know.
Yeah, and Jane Castor, Mayor Castor, was an endorsed Ruthless candidate, so we were following that race closely. And I know he poured a lot of money in the entire race, but particularly there at the end. And we always look at cost per vote, it was enormously high in his campaign, and yeah, was still unsuccessful. But so we know your opponent, but what other characteristics do you think, as a woman running in this race, an entrepreneur and a woman, but particularly being a woman, set you apart? You've got a lot of strong women that have been Ruthless candidates that surround you over there. Fentress Driscoll, Jennifer Webb, Mayor Castor, as I said, Congresswoman Kathy Castor. I mean, some really fabulous.
Mariella Smith, Kimberly Overman, Pat Kemp. There's a lot of great candidates, yes. So I think the one thing that makes me different from pretty much everybody else out there is this risk management process that I go through. It's funny, I was on a podcast yesterday, and I use this example that made everybody laugh, but I say, so I think about the risk management process continuously in my life, about how, what situations are gonna arise. So an example I've used was when I go on a date and we walk into a restaurant, I look around and I think, how are people going to slip and fall? Are there enough sprinkler heads on the ceiling? Where's the extra exit rate? Like really hot things to be talking about on a date, or not talking about, but thinking about on the date. So I bring this risk management mindset of like, okay, let's think this thing through. Like, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? Can we avoid the worst thing that's going to happen? How do we avoid it? And then what inadvertent other bad things are going to come of that decision? And then how do we manage and navigate those, right? And so what's happening right now with COVID-19 in the United States is a good example of how the risk management mindset plays out. We have some folks who really do think sharp and think well through the risk management process. Mayor Castor and Kimberly Overman both did a very good job right out of the gun, recognizing, hey, here are the problems and here are the solutions, and here are some future problems that are going to come out of these solutions and how we're going to resolve them on the emergency planning group. But I will bring that tool as like an innate part of me on every single decision that I'm going through,
Right.
how I analyze things and go through that thought process.
Right, which makes sense. I should mention that the Ruthless has grassroots, we call them SWAT teams, strong women and men, aligning together, organized all around the state. And we have a very, very strong one over in the Hillsborough, Pinellas area. There's a number of them on the call. Our leader, Gannett Stewart, is on the call, and Penny Parks, who sits on our executive board, is on the call, and Becca Teeter, who is on our staff, communications and program director. But someone just texted me that that your local group over there is having an online birthday bash for you. Is your